Hey everyone, I promised you this season we were going to talk to some people who are going to help us live our own rockstar doctor lives. And today's guest hopefully will give us some ideas about how we can continue to raise healthy, happy, resilient children. My journey in motherhood has been one of the biggest, most beautiful blessings of my life, but it is far from perfect. And my guest today, Dr. Katie Barge, is a child psychologist, and I thought it might be kind of fun to chat with her about her experiences and some of the things that we can maybe do ourselves as docs to make sure that our relationships with our kids are strong and healthy while we are building our businesses. Katie, it's great to see you.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about, where you're at right now and the kind of work that you do. I've gotten to know Dr. Katie through a business coaching program that we're in together, which has been really great to get to know her and learn about her work. And I've seen some of her videos, and I've actually sent them to many of you because I find her very relatable and the information so incredibly valuable. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing right now as a clinical psychologist.
Mhm. So the work that I'm doing right now is working with children between roughly the ages of 7 to 15. I mean, I can work from 0 to 25 because I'm a child psychologist. But it's usually, between those ages. And I attract high functioning, anxious children who are very good at masking their needs and very good at masking anxiety and kind of fight flight responses when they're at school and other places like that. And then when they get home, when they feel safe, and I suppose more regulated to start with, there's difficulties, and that might be seeping into school as well if they feel particularly safe at school. And so what then tends to happen is the school and the parents then approach me and ask me, is my child neurodiverse? Do they have ADHD, ADD, autism, and various other things? And a lot of the work that I do is on reframing who the child is at their essence, at their core, reminding the parents of who they are at their core and looking at how we can support strengths and needs, really, rather than looking at diagnoses, because actually that's where the magic is really enabling a child's authentic self to just blossom and bloom and look at those environments that can support them with that.
I think that's why I connect with your approach because I resonate with that. I mean, I think that labels have a purpose, but I think
Mhm,
for so many children and parents, it's really about looking at, well, who are you born to be and who are you? And that's truly a big part of our philosophy as
mhm,
chiropractors.
mhm,
It's like
mhm,
you have this beautiful potential within you. How do we honor that and help you expand it and explore it? And it seems
mhm,
like there's a lot of quick reactions in a lot of
mhm,
psychology that is just
mhm,
really wanting
mhm,
to label
mhm,
someone and give
mhm,
them a
mhm,
prescription
mhm.
or then build a plan of management around a label.
Absolutely. And I've just got this one case study to mind that I've been working with. And the school's point of view, some of the things that they'd said about her was, really quite shocking. They call her lazy, unteachable, things like that. And I didn't know what to expect when I first met this child. And honestly, she was one of the most effervescent, wise, magical, creative children I've ever met. And the work that we've done together, she's actually in a different educational setting now and one that meets her needs, and she's thriving.
Hmm.
And the mum's feedback to me was, you've seen my daughter for who she really is. And I mean, that was just the most loveliest feedback. But
Hmm.
I'd like to think that's what I want to do when I work with families, is seeing the child and the parent for who they really are and what their potential is. And yeah, and it's a joy to work with them.
Hmm. Was this always your approach?
I think it was, to be honest with you. So when I chose where to study my doctorate, I chose the institutions. I shortlisted them on ones that take like, what do we call it? An ecological systems model. So we're not looking at a within person model of, personality disorders. And I suppose I really wanted to look at all of the factors that make us who we are. I suppose
Hmm.
holistic's the word that I want to use. I've always been
Yeah.
interested in
Yeah.
holistic approaches to life, basically, whether that be exercise, nutrition, whatever. And I think that having a holistic and integrative view of how we are as human beings was the best way forward.
Right.
Um, and so I just I've always been seen as a little bit different as a child psychologist. I think, I've always been a bit out there and been pushing towards more of, get kids in nature, which to me doesn't sound radical at all, get them out of the
No, it
classroom, get them
doesn't.
into nature. But for
Yeah.
some individuals, that is seen as a bit radical.
Hmm. So this has always been your approach. You've always worked with kids in this capacity.
Mhm.
Do you notice? So how long have you been practicing?
Gosh, um, 24 years.
Okay, which brings me to my next question, which is, do you notice a change in kids today?
Hmm.
More anxiety. I mean, there was that great book, The Anxious Generation. There's been
Yes.
so much conversation around kids and screen time and social
Hmm.
media and the negative
Hmm.
effects of it. Do you
Hmm.
notice a difference in kids? And if so, do you have any suggestions for parents around what to do?
Um, I don't think, in all honesty, that kids have got more anxious. I think they've always been there, but
Okay.
we used to label them as things like oppositionally defiant. We
Okay.
would label them in all sorts of different ways. Problem children, and we'd send them to different kind of institutions and schools and things like that. I think
You
in the
think it's always
past,
been there and now we're just kind of we're approaching it differently.
I think it's a mixed bag. I think we are approaching it differently. I think today's parents are a lot more conscious and more aware, and so they're able to spot a lot more quickly when their child is experiencing anxiety. Obviously, I don't think social media helps, and
Right.
in terms of what it does to the prefrontal cortex, in terms of our attention span and things like that, social media doesn't help. But I think there's always been anxiety, probably to a
Right.
very similar level. I think we've just got better at spotting it.
Mhm.
Um, in the 90s, for example, I see a lot of girls with eating disorders, and in the 90s and early noughties, really, that was like, the kind of down to the models and the heroin chic look and things like that. That's what
Yeah.
we were blaming it on then. And now we blame it on social media. And yes, we have a responsibility in terms of parents and social media, but actually, the key cause, if you want to give it that, has always been for me in that very, very early parent relationship. So, yeah, are we more stressed, which is trickling down to our children? Yes, I think so. I think the work of Gabor Mate informs a lot of my work in that I think from 3 months in the womb until 5 years, we call that the primary patterning. I think if parents are stressed during those times, that
Mm.
really produces an anxious child. And it's not to blame
Mm.
parents. I am one of those parents with an anxious child. So I totally get it. And I have compassion for myself and those parents. But actually, I think it starts really much earlier than we think it does.
Right. So starting in pregnancy, I mean, this is a great transition. As you know, there's so many different things we could talk about on this show. Something that I think would be of most value to listeners at this starting interview is just like, what can we do better, right? So if you're, it's what I'm
Mhm,
hearing already is
mhm,
that stress in parents
mhm,
and parents being maybe emotionally dysregulated
mhm,
or
mhm,
overwhelmed with
mhm,
work
mhm,
or having
mhm,
their own
mhm,
personal
mhm,
stories. I mean, are
mhm,
those the starting points
mhm,
for most of the parenting like
mhm.
mistakes that people make?
Absolutely. And I really want to what's the word I want to say? Preface this is
Yeah.
or preface this with saying that it's not all on the parents. So children, there is a gene for sensitivity. There's no gene for ADHD. There's no gene for autism, as far as
Mhm.
I'm aware, and the research that I've done. But there is a gene for sensitivity, and there's different genes for it that all kind of come together. And so children are born with their own temperaments. So you can be really super lucky, if you want to look at it
Mhm.
that way, and have a very laid back child and be the most stressed parent in the world. And that child might not go on to develop anxiety. Or you could, as my mum did with myself and I did with my daughter, have a very highly sensitive child by nature, by their temperament, and have a parent who's experiencing stress, and they're likely to go on to experience anxiety. And it's like,
Mhm.
the whole nature nurture debate. It's both. It is both.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so going back to your question, I would say, in an ideal world, pregnancy would be stress free. I mean, does that happen? No, because I mean,
Nope.
we've got so much going on, but it is things like nutrition is so important as
Mm,
well. And it is a totally holistic view. And it's about having balance. And it's so
right.
boring, that word. Like there's no magic solution to this. It's about living a life that feels good,
Right.
basically.
And it's like there's not, but this is like everything in life. There's not one magic solution. You don't take
No.
this, do this one exercise for today and then it changes everything. It's consistency in habits, it's consistency in nutrition and sleep and connection and friendships. It's all the boring day-to-day stuff that you just need
Yeah,
to build a healthy life.
absolutely. And the things that get in the way of that are, I would say, society and the parental ego, because we want to fit in with our communities. And if you go to different countries like we were speaking about earlier, who aren't so consumer focused and materialistic as
Hmm.
cultures, they're probably a lot less stressed. Myself as an example, I moved from being in the city to living pretty much semi-rurally. I'm a little bit of a hermit, but I'm so much less stressed because I've got no one to compare myself to, even as much as I don't even compare my garden because I don't have a neighbour to compare the garden with. I'm very
Right.
lucky in that sense. But I noticed straight away, I just even the clothes that I wore, it's when I'm visiting my friends on the coast and they're all in their shorts and their t-shirts. So I'm like, wow, this is lovely actually, because I haven't got to care as much.
Yeah.
And it's things like that that seem really trivial, but actually if we really stop and think as parents, and it starts when during pregnancy, why am I doing the things that I'm doing?
Hmm.
Because parents will say to me, well, I had to work super hard in pregnancy because I had to get this kitchen extension, and I had to get this, and it's like, did I really have to do that?
Mm. Hmm.
It's for
Yeah,
me, it's
it's
all about basics and simplicity.
yeah, and you look at how people live in other cultures and countries where, there's multiple family members living in a small space. And
Yeah.
yeah, we have these definitions of needs and also success
Yes.
in our worlds that make you stop. If you stop and pause and ask yourself, like, yeah, what do I really need? And what is this? Is this really a priority? This kitchen renovation, does it need to happen during your pregnancy? Or, what's it going to give you? But I think there's a lot of pressures that people put on themselves for to be perfect and to compare themselves for sure.
I totally, and I was one of those parents for my first pregnancy. I wanted the Instagram nursery, I wanted all of the right tools and things like that. And then by the time I had my second daughter, I literally needed pretty much nothing. I wore her most of the time. Um, both of my children never were in their nurseries. They were in my bed,
Yeah.
co-sleeping. So I saved so much money the second time round because I realized how
Yeah.
little I actually needed, because all they need is us.
Yeah.
And that's that's hard for us as parents to kind of get our head around, because it's like it's only for a finite time really if you look at our whole lifespan. But actually it's
Mm.
really hard. I find it really hard when I was breastfeeding to think, oh, I've got to be multitasking while I'm breastfeeding. I've got to be doing it. And I think, no, just be there. And I find
Yeah.
that really hard as a parent.
Yeah. I was chatting with a mom in the practice this morning. Her son is literally 12 days old. And she also had a C-section, so she's recovering from the operation.
Oh.
And she's like, okay, she came in today on her own. The other day, her husband brought her here, and she's lifting things. And I'm like, let's remember you need some rest. Like you did have surgery. Well, I got to do this. I go, no, you actually don't have to do any of those things. Like remember to give yourself grace because the next 6 months are still going to be life changing. And if you're a young parent listening and you're a young mom particularly, know that like it took your body time to change. It's going to take your body time to get back to what it was like before pregnancy and give yourself space and grace to go at your own pace and not put all that pressure on yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really hard as parents. I think especially if you're like a type A, high functioning, which let's be honest, most of us women are high functioning because we're mums and we're women and we're used to multitasking. And I
Yeah,
think it became another project for me, my first pregnancy, and the early months of doing it the best that I could, because we all want to do our best for our kids, don't
right.
we?
Yeah.
But then it can tip over into that perfectionism, and that creates stress. So I think the biggest thing I think for parents is to give themselves more grace, more compassion, like you were saying.
Yeah.
um Stop comparing. I think for me that was, Do you know, I went camping last year and it was proper rough camping, wild camping, where I didn't have any phone signal or anything like that. And just being off social media for 5 days, it made me realize how detrimental it is to my mental health being on social media sometimes, because I think we just
Yeah.
naturally compare ourselves all the time, even though we know it's not real and it's the
Yeah.
highlights, but we just do it. It's human nature, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you're saying that and you're a clinical psychologist, what does it say for the rest of us? Because you know all the things, right? To
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
So we know we're already talking about like parents need to take care of themselves, this holistic approach to looking at your nutrition, your
Mhm,
exercise, your overall stress levels.
mhm,
And I know that for you in your work, you encourage your clients, you work with the kids, but you encourage the parents to spend a bit of time with you in a kind of lighthearted clinical type session. So
yes.
are there things that you feel you're consistently reminding parents? Like if there were some things that are more common that
Mhm,
parents accidentally do or aren't aware that they're doing, is there anything
mhm.
that seems to be a common thread?
Absolutely. And this is down from the most high earning parents right down to those parents who were struggling financially, is parents thinking that quality time and being present with their children requires big ticket stuff, and it requires holidays, expensive days out. So many parents will say to me, oh, they just didn't appreciate we spent all this money on a holiday. A lot of the parents I've worked with, their biggest problems come on a holiday and family vacations where they've spent all this money, they'll be going to an all-inclusive or somewhere, lovely, and the child is being a child. They're out of their usual environment, and because they're a sensitive child, typically the ones that I work with, they'd probably rather be at home where they feel familiar or where there's not so much going on and things like that. And then what happens is there's this big fallout because the parent then becomes resentful that the child is ungrateful and not behaving for them, without understanding that actually you're plonking them in a new environment, their sleep routines all over the place because they're on holiday, their eating's probably completely all over the place. Because it is a big change. And actually, going on holiday for a child is quite stressful, even if you've
Mm.
got a really well balanced, laid back child. So that's one massive thread. And just on a more simple basis, so I worked with this one lovely family, very, very wealthy, and all of their housework was done for them and the cooking was done for them. And I just said to her, why don't you just do? She's like, I don't know how to spend time with my child. And I literally just got on the call after I was trying to clean the windows, and my daughter, she was about 4 at the time, was helping me, and it was getting worse, smearing the windows. But it was it was lovely. It was a lovely moment where she wanted to help me clean. And I said, just simple, basic things like that. It's like if you look back to hunter-gatherer times, or, even some cultures now in South America, they're all working together and it's just going about daily life together, doing the most mundane and boring things. Like I'll just pull up a chair in the kitchen and just chop some stuffed food up with my kids, and they're loving that. They're like, oh, can we chop some carrots? And because it's so simple, parents are like bamboozled by that, because they think
Right.
that quality time means taking them to town and buying them stuff or doing stuff. And it's like, no, we've just forgotten who we are as human beings and what human connection is. And, some of our best days over the Easter holidays with my own family has just been having long, light, slow mornings in bed, having tickles and cuddles and watching a
Yeah.
bit of rubbish TV together as a family, having
Yeah.
some popcorn and watching a movie together. And it sounds like twee and cheesy, but it's true.
It's just making the most of the small moments. And also, I think, especially if your children are 10 and under, I mean, everything is
Yes.
new to them, and you are
Yes.
modeling constantly to them how to be an adult, how to be
Yes.
polite, how to
Yes.
behave in a restaurant, how to
Yes.
be bored. Like I think
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's I mean, I took my kids everywhere, oftentimes because I was single mom and I just
Mm.
did. But on
Yeah.
part of my was I was very intentional because I wanted them to see other adults adulting. And I think and I
Absolutely.
thought like I always had little snacks and little cars and toys and books in my purse
Yes.
because so I would keep them busy with age appropriate things. But I think it was helpful for them for sure.
I think, and it is so helpful for children. Like my daughter says, one of her favorite, most fun memories is when she came to the office with me when I worked in an office. She
Yeah.
was on the swingy chairs while I was answering some calls and things like that. So I think one of the
Honestly, it
biggest
just sounds
takes.
like keep it simple. Like just live your life and engage with your children while you're doing it.
Absolutely. And it goes back to those other things of like be grateful for what you've got and really stop and look and think if everything was taken away from me right now, what would be the most important thing? And it's your kids and your connection with your kids. Hopefully
Hmm.
that's what they would realize and
Hmm.
just strip it all away. And that's a really common thread when I'm working with parents is just to remember why they wanted to have children, why they had children in the first place.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the time, parents are coming to me and they're just exhausted, they're burnt out, they see the child as the problem. And one of the mums I was working with, she's been on a really long IVF journey to have her daughter. And
Hmm.
I had a one-to-one session with this little girl, and she's absolutely gorgeous. And her whole, because I do Jungian sand play therapy, all of the symbols in the tray just showed me that she wanted to reconnect with her mum.
Hmm.
And actually, the child in the tray was lost. The story was the child was lost and the mum was looking for her. And when I
Hmm.
fed this back to the mum cried and she said,
Aw.
I need to find her again. I need to find my little girl again and we need to reconnect again. And she didn't need any more sessions with me. She just had one session with me.
Wow, that's powerful.
Really powerful stuff. And that's why I loved the approach because it's not me telling them as the expert, it's their child telling them.
Right. It's the healing is coming truly from within.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
just an outside in fix of like, okay, your child's misbehaving here. Let's just give them some, Adderall or Ritalin or something.
Yes.
Like, let's actually look at what's the cause of their dysfunction, their behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the variety of kids that you work with kids with different, behavioral needs.
Hmm.
Do you
Hmm.
find there's some things specifically for let's say a child, let's just pick a couple of them and see, because I know listeners
Mm.
have a variety of kids as well, and I don't think
Yes.
the labeling of society is helping matters at that either. But for a child, let's say who is more active,
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
there, a couple of simple things that you find generally help?
Absolutely. And I'm smiling because where I'm staying at the moment on vacation, one of the amazing children here is one of those children. She's
Huh.
absolutely gorgeous. And it's
Yeah.
about having a balance of the quiet time and the active time. For a very, very active child, they do need those periods of activity. But I think one thing that I see that's a common thread of parents with really physical and active children, whether they're boys or girls, is they think it's like having a really kind of hyperactive dog. It's like, I need to tire them out. And yes, there is an element of that. But actually, especially if we're looking and it is, like impulsivity and things like that. I don't even want to use the word ADHD because I just want to get away from diagnoses.
Yeah, me
But if
too.
you have an extremely active child, they actually need a lot of quiet time because a
Mm.
lot of their overactivity is being overtired.
Mm.
And so it's really about being in tune with your child and getting to know what works and trialing things out. And a lot of the children that I work with and the parents who are very, very, very active children, they say, oh,
Mm.
we took them out in the morning to let off steam. We took them out in the afternoon to let off steam. Then we went here and they were absolutely horrendous. And I hear this all the time. And it's because the child's overtired. It's like a baby. If a baby's
Yeah.
overtired, if I'm overtired, I'm horrendous. If I've been
Yeah.
overactive and I'm an
Yeah.
active person. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's having that rhythm to your day. And it's like we said before, there's no magic wand, but it's about that rhythm and natural process of getting to know your kids, right?
It almost sounds to me like for kids that are more active like that, they have greater outbursts of activity, but then they also need more rest to
Absolutely.
counterbalance that. Yeah, more than maybe an average person, if there's anything called average.
Absolutely. And like if
Yeah.
you were looking at it on a chart or a diagram, what goes up high has to come down quite high. So those really active children,
Yeah.
they need a bit more downtime. And then they
Yeah.
have that spike again.
Yeah. And what would you say, so for kids that tend to be more anxious,
Hmm.
is there something that typically helps most anxious kids find a little bit more groundedness and settledness?
Yeah, so familiarity, structure, the I mean, regulated adults is important across the
Mm.
board, but for children who have anxious tendencies, it's super, super important and gentleness and
Mm.
Often thinking, looking at the sensory aspects of where they are. So for children who are anxious, they are sensitive kids. You know, the aesthetics is really important. The feel of a place is really important. Like if you go into an average school, the lighting, you know, strip lighting and things like that, which to us might seem a bit, you know, that's not that important, but it is for children because we need to create almost like a womb-like environment for children who have high anxiety so that they feel held and contained. And you know, things like mood lighting, always talking about, like, you know, for girls fairy lights to be gender stereotype, and for
Yeah.
boys like a lava lamp or something. But you just really want to help them to feel cocooned and safe
Mm.
wherever they are. um
So would you categorize kids who are more sensitive, like the highly
mhm,
sensitive child?
mhm,
And I love that
mhm,
you brought that up because one of the books that I bought
mhm,
24 years ago with my first
mhm.
son was The Highly Sensitive Child. And
Yes,
I found it so valuable and so interesting. And I certainly see it as a spectrum in my family, different
yeah.
personalities, and in my practice. But do you think is sensitivity and anxiety closely connected, or do you find there's still differences? Like,
Really
are
good.
they the same? Or like what I'm hearing is because the things you described for an anxious child are also things I think I would do for a kid who's more sensitive.
Yes. So basically, anxiety as a construct is literally fight or flight. It's the flight response, so in nervous system.
Right.
And so anxiety is not feeling safe in our environment for whatever reason, perceived threat, and it's we deal with it through the fight flight response. So you could have a child who has sensory processing issues like I do, you know, sensitive to touch, loud noises, big crowds, bright lights, all of those things. And so certain environments will make me feel unsafe just because of the lighting or just because of the high volume or busyness. So there's that. But then you could also have another child who has been through, maybe has an insecure attachment with a caregiver, primary caregiver, or they might have had big T or little t trauma. And so they feel unsafe on a emotional amygdala level. They're still feeling unsafe, they're still in their fight or flight, but it's coming from different, the etiology, as we call it in
Yeah,
our
yeah,
world,
yeah.
is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really, for me, it's about unpicking where that anxiety is coming from,
Mm,
like you said, because if I know, for example, when a child comes to see me, I can quite quickly tell, okay, is this a sensory processing issue? Is it an attachment, you know, trauma issue? Is it a bit of both? And then that informs how I give my kind of roadmap and plan for parents.
right. It's finding where the
Often it's a
starting
bit of
point is.
both. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's like anything. You want to actually, you don't want to diagnose the child, but you want to, you want to diagnose the origin, right, and the cause of the
yeah.
problem, because then you can really find the right response.
Absolutely. And for the
Yeah.
girl that I was talking about just now, actually, she does have sensory processing needs, but she
Yeah.
also has a mum who I would say she's insecurely attached to. So we need to deal with both things, because the
Right.
mum's like, oh, so if I just take her to Costa Coffee and have some one-to-one time, is that going to fix her? And I said, well, no, because she's still got sensitivity to certain clothes,
Yeah.
lighting, you know, we've got to work at it from every, and that's that holistic approach again.
Right. Okay, so last one. So then if a child is sensitive my understanding is sensitivity is a spectrum. So
Mhm,
some people, and you said
absolutely.
earlier that it is a gene, there's a gene for it.
Yes.
And I found in my own family without, sharing any personal information about my kids, like we're all a bit different. Some of us are more
Yes.
sensitive than others. And,
Yes.
even when you made the travel, story, like when we travel, my sons and I, even as adults, like it's a great personality test. And there are sometimes things come up because our personalities are different. Now, we're not
Yes.
only have different sensitivities, but we have different personalities that we have to honor when we travel together so that everyone has a good time. But when it comes to
Yes.
sensitivity, can we just describe that a little bit? And also, if parents are hearing this going, oh, yeah, that's my kid, what is one thing they could do?
Okay. So sensitivity, it's not like a diagnosis or anything like that. It's like 15 to 20% of the population. And what it means broadly is that if you're a sensitive individual, we process things much to a much deeper level. So
Okay.
usually highly empathic. We can read situations, read rooms, things like that. We are impacted hugely by our environment. So highly sensitive people,
Mm,
individuals and children, they thrive in the right environments, and they can wither in, much more than kind of more laid back kids, in environments that aren't right for them. So if you've got a highly sensitive child, it's about not seeing it as a weakness. I think we've moved beyond that now anyway, but I always say that anyway. It's like, it's not about being seen as weak or not strong. Actually, it's a strength, because we see the beauty in things. We can appreciate, we tend to, highly sensitive and more creative and all of those kind of things. So it's just working with your child and really appreciating their vast inner landscape and
mm,
working with that, because all highly
hmm.
sensitive children are different.
Yeah.
And for example, my daughter, she's a highly sensitive, and when she was in her other school, they just thought, oh, she's away. They would say things like she's away with the fairies, and she's not academic, she doesn't listen, da 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 da. Went to a new, I was going to homeschool her, but I find this amazing place. And since she's been, they see her for who she is, and they see how creative she is, and how she can think fluidly, and how all of those kind of attributes, and how thoughtful and kind she is. And it's about
Mm,
really, it all comes back to seeing your child for who they really are and
mm.
without society's lens. There's a really good book by, I think it's Dr. Shafali.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's called The Parenting Map. And when my friends come around my house, they're like, Kate, you're a child psychologist. Why have you got all these parenting books? It's like, 'cause I'm fascinated by it. But there's a
Mm,
section in there, and she describes all different types of children. And it's so beautiful, because they're all children that if you read the diagnostic criteria, they'd be like, well, that's the ADHD child, that's the
mm.
oppositional defiant child. But she describes them in such a beautiful way in terms of their temperament. So it's about looking at the temperament of the highly sensitive child and really honouring that. And
Yeah.
I had some parents who really wanted a label for their child, an autism label. And I read
Yeah.
this chapter of the book to them, and the dad cried, because he said,
Mm.
wow, I've seen my son for who he is. I mean, I wish I'd written the book, to be honest.
Yeah, but I love that. That seems to be the running theme in our conversation here. I mean, if I look at my notes here, I know we've talked a lot about parents looking at themselves. So
Yes.
listeners, we want to make sure that we are checking ourselves and we are dealing with
Yep.
our own stuff, and we're regulating ourselves, and nutritionally, with exercise, with our nervous system, with adjustments, with working with therapists. So first and foremost, take care of yourself as a parent. But we're also hearing so much about just, yeah, what you've just said, like, see your child for who they really are and honor that, and find professionals if you're struggling with a behavior in your child. There's so many great resources and so many great professionals to help you. And I really love that this is part of your approach.
And it is, and it's about being an advocate for your child. And I see myself very much as, instead of an expert in child psychology, I would say I'm an advocate for children and families, because actually, with my own children, and this makes me sound like a bad parent, but I'm not fussed. I mean, obviously, I go to parents' evenings where the school tells me about my child, but I know my child so well that what they say, it doesn't really impact me. Whereas a lot of the parents I work with, because we've been conditioned by society, they go to the parents' evening and the school say, oh, they're not good at this, they're struggling with this. And then they'll go back and be like, you need to listen more. Because the school, they're not seeing the child for who they are, because they're not their
Mm,
parents.
yeah.
And so I support parents in really get to know your child. And one thing that really breaks my heart, and I get it because parents are burnt out, is one of the first questions, as I say, is what is your child's strengths and what do you love about them?
Mm,
And often they find that really difficult to answer, not because they don't love their child, but because they're so used to hearing the
yeah.
negative stuff.
Right. Oh, I love that. I mean, gosh, I could talk to you all day long. I know that there's so much value in your knowledge and the kindness and the love that you have for the work that you do. What are some of the great ways that docs can continue this conversation? I mean, obviously, we're going to put links, listeners, to Dr. Katie's Instagram, to her website, to other things that she's working on. But is there any place that you would love to direct people?
For now, just my Instagram, because it's different content there every day. It's around highly sensitives and child advocacy and things like that. So yeah, I say that's the best place to go for now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if it comes to, you and what are the things that you're doing to keep Dr. Katie healthy? I know you're on holidays right now, and I'm so thankful you found time for a podcast interview right now, but how does Dr. Katie stay healthy?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this before we spoke. And actually, again, it sounds really cheesy, but it's about being in alignment. And I know that word is overused nowadays, but the way that I make it work is by just being flexible because I've realized I'm never going to have
Mm,
balance in my life. So I've
right.
just got to be super flexible because when I realized that I was going to be on vacation when we were having this podcast, I thought, the rigid part of my brain was like, oh no, I've got to separate the two. It's got to be from my house. But the more flexible I can be, and because I love my work and I love podcasts and doing this kind of stuff, I just make it work because it's coming from a place of joy. And I think if
Mm,
I'm in my joy and my flow, then I'm healthy. And
right.
that's when I prioritize my, 5K walks a day and my healthy diet and things like that and time for my kids because I'm in my joy. And I know when I'm not in my joy and I'm over delivering with clients or I'm taking on work that isn't in alignment with me, then that's when, yeah, things go south.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, I could talk to you all day, but I want to respect your time. That's a great way for us to actually wrap. It's like, to docs, follow your joy. You know that I'm going to always recommend you do so and find ways to nourish your soul, to nourish the fun, to nourish the playful parts of you, to find joy in your work. And if you're not having fun at work, how can we relight that spark for you? How can we get you having a bit more fun in your day to day? Because honestly, for me, like if life isn't fun and you're not finding the gifts, and the joy in it, it would be pretty bleak.
Absolutely. And I know you'll resonate with this because you have this light about you, but a lot of my work is so playful, even when I'm on
Mm.
a call with a parent, because I'm so used to working with kids all day, every day, it just naturally makes me more playful and I just find joy in everything. So,
Yeah.
I think that helps us. I think kids are so wise.
You
They're
know
so
what?
wise.
Yeah, they are. And this brings me to a point. One time I was at a store, I was purchasing some furniture or something, and the lady at the cashier, she was like, she goes, do you you're a doctor. She goes, oh, like, she goes, do you work with kids? And I was like, yeah. And I go, how'd you know? She goes, because you're just so fun. And I was like, oh yeah, like when you're around babies and kids and you can have a laugh and you can embrace their silliness, I think it gives you a bit more of a lighthearted approach to life. And many docs that I know and listening here are blessed to do so. So lean into that more, I'd say.
Absolutely. Spend time with more animals and kids. That's what I say.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, you're going to go to the show notes and you're going to follow Dr. Katie on Instagram. Do you have any final thoughts for parents listening as far as like, I don't know, any final bit of take-home advice or one thing you would love parents to know?
One thing I would love parents to know, and it's just a simple practice, which hopefully they do anyway, is just self compassion and realizing that we are not responsible for. I saw this quote, this isn't my quote, but we're not responsible for all of our children's strengths and achievements, and we're not responsible for all of the things that they struggle with because they do come
Mm,
into this world with a particular temperament. And I think naturally, as parents, we are so hard on ourselves. And I think we have to reconnect with who we are at our essence before
mm,
we can do that with our children. So every morning, wake up and say, what do I really need today? And that's
mm.
it. Just really tune in, hand on heart, hand on stomach. What do I really need today?
It's like that saying, you can't parent, you can't live from an empty bucket, right? So that brings
No.
us right back to take care of yourself first. But yeah,
Yeah.
be compassionate. We don't have it all figured out. I mean, I actually say that to my son sometimes. I'm like, look, I've never done this before. I don't
Mm.
know like what it's like to have a 24-year-old or a
No,
20-year-old. Like obviously with the second, it's a little bit different because I have some experience, but also we're all newbies on this earth. Right. And we don't
absolutely.
know, we expect ourselves to be perfect and to get it all right. But the truth is, we are all going to make mistakes. And the things that come back maybe to haunt us about our own childhood, even though they were beautiful and positive, our kids are going to have those things too. We can't put them in a bubble and protect them from everything.
No, and and this sounds awful, but I hope it brings some comfort. But can cause harm by doing the most innocuous things because it's about how the child interprets it.
Mm.
You know, when I used to do hypnotherapy and an adult would come to me and they would give me this kind of traumatic life experience, one of the biggest traumas might be something really, really what I would class as simple, like they got shampoo in my eyes when they were washing, my dad was washing my hair once, you know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like we can't control for how our child is going to perceive as long as we're
Yeah.
trying our best and we're learning.
Yeah. Katie, always a pleasure to chat with you.
And
Look
you,
forward to seeing
Melissa.
you in person soon. Look forward to staying connected. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy and the light and all the good that you're bringing into the world. And the listeners, be sure to check it out. Check out her work.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's been such a pleasure.